Hey everyone. Today we have to just discuss about a small discussion on the cloud security architecture. Like I just want to discuss with you about the basic security tools and the basic concept of penetration testing in the AWS platform. So before I start, I just want to give you an introduction about my profile. My name is Krish. I'll be your instructor for this webinar. And basically about my profile, I've been working in the industry for the last 17 years on various domains. And from 2010 onwards, I'm working in cloud computing, especially AWS and some specific platforms like that. I basically work with different companies worldwide. I'm a consultant as well as a trainer. That's my profile team. So let's start now. First of all, this is the agenda of the webinar. So we'll basically start with the concept of shared responsibility model. And I just want to share with you some more challenges I felt about this particular model. And then we'll discuss about the concept of defensive and offensive approach in the cloud computing, like basically what is a defensive approach and what is an offensive approach. And we'll discuss about the cloud native tools, like basically what are the key tools in AWS by default for providing you various security features. Then we will discuss about the concept of penetration testing in AWS, and I will tell you some simple examples of how this penetration testing thing works in real time. Okay, that's a whole plan. So let's start now. So first of all, team, I just want to start with a few things like basically when you go to a cloud computing platform, okay, let's say AWS or Azure or whatever it is, let's say it's anything. Okay, whenever you go to a public cloud provider or basically a cloud computing platform, the first thing that you will hear about is basically what we call as a shared responsibility model. There is a model which we have called as a shared responsibility model. And what exactly is a shared responsibility model, team? So when you say the word shared responsibility model, that is something where there is two entities like a cloud service provider and there is a cloud service customer. Okay, so we have a cloud service provider and we have a cloud service customer. Let's say the cloud service provider can be AWS or Azure or GCP, whatever it is, and that they are called as the cloud service providers. And we have a cloud service customers. This is the basic way which we always think about, team. And just one more thing on this, like when you talk about the cloud computing, the first thing is that there are two words I want to tell you. The security of the cloud and the security in the cloud. There is two words actually. The security of the cloud and the security in the cloud. So security of the cloud means basically I'm talking about the infrastructure security, the physical security, and the infra connections and those kind of the infrastructure which is owned by the cloud service provider. You can basically check about the regions and availability zones in AWS. So that particular infrastructure is basically managed by the cloud service provider. When you go to any cloud provider, it is basically managed by the cloud service provider itself. Let's say it can be AWS or Azure or GCP or any cloud provider. And the security in the cloud means whatever things you deploy in the cloud platform is basically the responsibility of the customer. And of course, we discuss about this, like we have a IaaS model, PaaS and SaaS. So I'm not going about the basics on this, team, but a few more things I want to discuss with you on this. So when you say the word shared responsibility model, team, this is something which most people don't discuss with you. They will tell you that there is two things called as cloud provider and cloud consumer. But do you think these are the only two things in this model? Or basically, let's say, are we having only these things in the cloud platform, a provider and a consumer? Do we have anybody in between? Yes, we have a lot of people in between. Like, for example, when the cloud computing started, there was only two things. Like we have a cloud service provider and we have a cloud service consumer. Now, basically what happens is, team, we have a lot more things like the cloud auditor, then the cloud broker, we call it as CASB and all. Okay. Then we have the ISP who provides the internet. Then the sub companies which basically come as a part of it. So there are a lot more entities which is now coming as a part of the cloud platform. So team, tell me, how many of you people use AWS regularly? Or basically in your company, how many of you have seen that they use AWS? A lot of people are there. Okay, my question is that the same people who use AWS, how many people in the same company itself, they use Azure also? Right? See, now you can see that everybody is telling me that Yes, like the same way we are using AWS in the company, in the same company itself, we are using Azure also. We are using GCP also. So basically what we have to understand here is that team, we are going for a multi-cloud model. We are going for a multi-cloud strategy. There are multiple cloud providers. There are multiple cloud computing services. And I always say in my previous webinars and sessions that you cannot say that which is the best cloud provider. To be honest, team, it is never possible for you to say which is the best cloud service provider. It can be AWS or Azure or GCP and all based on your organization's requirements, right? So let's assume that in my company, there are 3 to 4 providers like, okay, I'm using an AWS service. I'm using some Azure services. I'm using a DigitalOcean service. I'm using Oracle Cloud. So what if I'm having multiple providers like this? How do you manage them? That is where you can basically go for a cloud broker. The cloud broker will basically help you to manage all these things together. Like they provide your console for managing all these clouds together. That's all. Like the same way to audit the cloud platform, we have a cloud auditor. So we have a cloud professionals in our company. We have a AWS experts in our company. So end of the day, now in the modern scenario, especially in the last 2 year scenario, you have to always think about that. Whenever somebody is telling you about shared responsibility model, tell them that it is not only these 2 things coming in picture, there are more actors in the scene. That means that there is a cloud broker, there is a cloud auditor, there is an internet service provider, there is a subcontractors, there is vendors. So in between, we have a lot of things. So all these things are sharing the responsibility, right? So now I'll give you one more example for this team. Okay, I'll give you a very interesting example for this. So team, let's say for example, this is something which I also felt. You can correct me if you feel something is more relevant to this. So basically what happened this team, basically when I go to some companies, like let's say any company, when I go to some particular companies for consulting, they will tell me that, Krish, please don't use any kind of native solutions. Like they are not so good, or they basically don't like going for the cloud native solutions. What is a cloud native solution? The solution which is basically by default in the cloud platform. Let's say this is my AWS account you see here. So in my AWS account, see, you can see there is a lot of security services here. See this IAM, Cognito, Secrets Manager, Guard Duty. So for example, let's say I'm using the tool called as Guard Duty. Guard Duty is basically what we call as a SIEM solution, SIEM solution. But what if this Guard Duty is not able to meet my business requirements? If the Guard Duty is not able to meet my business requirements, I will go for a third-party tool. Okay, I will basically go for a third-party tool, or we call it as a third-party virtual appliance. Don't forget, team, basically, if the cloud native solution or the default tool provided by the cloud service provider is not able to support you, you will use third-party appliances. Like, for example, now I want to get a more efficient firewall. I will basically type firewall here. See this team, if you scroll down, you can basically see that there is a lot of firewalls from different vendors like Fortinet, Palo Alto, Barracuda, Cisco. See, you can get all these things in the cloud platform with the help of something called as in the form of virtual appliance. So basically now what happens is that you are the customer, we have a cloud service provider, and we have a solutions provider also. See this, there is multiple vendors who is basically there in the scene. So that is the first thing, team. When you go for a cloud platform, the first thing is that there is something called as a shared responsibility model where you share the responsibility with multiple people. Okay, so I will tell you why I am discussing all these things. When you talk about security in the on-premises, okay, I am talking about security in the on-premises. You can say that, Krish, it's 100% our responsibility. When we say the security is our responsibility, we always say that when you go to the on-premises, the security is our responsibility. But at the same time, when you go to a cloud computing platform, any cloud computing platform, the security is basically something which we call as a shared model. We are sharing the responsibility of security. Okay. So basically what happens, as we are sharing the security between multiple custom or multiple services and basically the cloud service provider, what happens is that, team, this particular sharing of the responsibility can bring a lot of challenges to us. End of the day, I want to make sure my organization is secure, my data is secure, my functionality is secure, I can have a proper business continuity. So all these things are only possible if I understand who is responsible for what. That is a primary point you have to always understand, team. Whenever you go to any cloud platform, let's say Amazon or Azure or any cloud platform, always keep this in mind. Who is the person who is responsible for certain activity? So for example, now I am going to a service called as Amazon EC2. Okay. Or now I am going to a service called as AWS S3. Or now I am going to a service called as Lightsail or Elastic Container Service. So in that particular service, what all the responsibility lies with the customer and what all the responsibilities lies with the cloud service provider. That's something which is very important for us to understand. This is the first thing that every cloud security professional has to understand. And basically that is a point where attackers can compromise you a lot. I'll tell you the reason for that. So I will tell you some key areas of concerns we have. What do you mean by key areas of concerns? Like for example, when you go to a cloud platform, what all things are the key factors which you feel the most important? The first thing is team. The first and the most important thing of challenge of the cloud platform is that team. We have a data security and compliance. Data security and compliance. I will give you one example for this. Whether if I go to a IaaS service or if I go to a PaaS service or if I go for a SaaS service, the liability and legal responsibility for data security always lies with the customer. Whatever services you're using, the liability and legal responsibility always lies with the customer. So team, I'll give you a very, very important point this. Okay, just give me a second. So I'm now going to Amazon. Okay, I'm storing my customers' data here. Let's assume that I run a business in India, or let's say I basically run a business in European countries. So in European country, if I run a business, which regulation I have to comply with, which data privacy regulation I have to comply with in Europe, like European Union? GDPR. It's GDPR, right? Yes, exactly. It's GDPR. So basically, I have to comply with the GDPR there. So what happens there is, team, when you go to a cloud platform and you store the data in a cloud provider service, end of the day, even if it's their mistake or your mistake, like let's say that I want to ensure that this particular data is in India only. See, my data is in India only. Maybe due to some reason, if the cloud service provider make it public, or maybe due to some reason, if the cloud service provider copy it to some other location, end of the day, I will be answerable to the authorities and I will be answerable to the compliance requirement, right? So basically, whatever service models you go, this will be your responsibility. Okay, let me talk about one more thing as a part of it. We have something called as encryption. That is basically all the people ask about encryption. So team, when you say encryption in the cloud platform, I can divide the encryption into two types. We can divide the encryption into two things. First is that we have a client side encryption. Okay, we have a client side encryption and we have a server side encryption. When you go to any cloud platform, there is two things. We have a client side encryption and we have a server side encryption. The difference is that, team, when you go for a client side encryption, you are basically encrypting your data. So first of all, I encrypt my data. And once I encrypt my data, I basically upload it to the cloud platform. Okay, I do the encryption before I upload it to the cloud platform. That is what we call as client-side encryption. If I do the encryption after I move it to the cloud platform, we call it as a server-side encryption. I'll repeat once again, team. If I basically do the encryption after I move it to the cloud platform, it's called as a server-side encryption. Okay, so team, tell me, which one do you feel is safe? Like, do you feel the client-side or server-side more safe? Okay. Yeah, I got some people say server side, some people say client side. Definitely, I even me also feel like this is the most secure way. But it can cause me a lot of technical glitches. Like I have to basically, have a lot of, I have to buy some serious hardware for this. I have to invest a lot of money on this. To avoid the issue, people will go for this one. This is definitely a good idea because you are encrypting your data before you go to the cloud platform. So even if somebody is trying to copy your data, they will not be able to do anything. But at the same time, if you go for a server-side encryption, as we discussed, this is something which we do after I upload to the cloud platform. There is a very important point. Who is responsible for the server-side encryption? So understand that, team. Server-side encryption is a responsibility in most of the cases of the customer. I'll give an example for that, team. I'll give you a very simple example for that. Let's say now, team, I am buying a device from Cisco. Let's say, for example, I am buying a firewall from Cisco. Okay, I am buying a firewall from Cisco. And I'm telling that as I bought a firewall from Cisco, Now Cisco is 100% responsibility for my company requirements or company security. Is it like that? Never, right? Because I bought a firewall from Cisco, but the way to implement that firewall, the way to secure that firewall, and all the things is my responsibility to configure it properly. Like the same way, see, in Amazon S3, you can see that in Amazon S3, they basically provide you encryption. See, if you go to properties of the particular bucket in Amazon S3, you can see there is something called as encryption. It's a lengthy topic we can discuss for a whole day actually. See, once I enable this, it's my responsibility only, right? But at the same time, if I don't do this, I cannot blame the cloud service provider. The cloud service provider is giving you the option to basically have an encryption. But if you don't do the encryption, who is responsible for that? It is the responsibility of the customer only, right? That's it. So these are some points which you have to understand. So end of the day, data security and compliance is always the responsibility of customer. I'll give you one more example, team. So many people ask me, even just before the webinar also, I got a query that, so Krish, who is responsible for the PCI DSS compliance? Or who is responsible for the HIPAA compliance? Or who is responsible for the RBI compliance and all? End of the day, all these compliance will come to customer. Exactly, it's the customer. But one point I want to always remind you, team. So then, if it's the customer, then why do you basically always insist on the cloud provider certification? Like, why do you basically prefer the cloud service provider to have the certification? End of the day, this is your responsibility. And if you want it, you have to take the certification, or you have to basically go for this compliance. Then why do you insist for the cloud service provider? If you basically go for the cloud service provider, and if the cloud provider is also having these certifications, it will give you a trust. It will give you more trust on him that you can implement these controls properly. That's all. But end of the day, all these things are the responsibility of the customer. The next thing is that infrastructure security. This is a very interesting point. I want to basically discuss a lot, team, but this is a very short session. I'm just giving you an overview. When you say about infra security, in the on-premises, when you talk about the on-premises means when you talk about your native environment, not the cloud platform. Basically, there what happens is you can basically create your own network. You can basically create your own zones, like public zones, like secure zones, DMZ. So you can create zones. You can configure your routers. You can configure your firewalls. You can configure the switches. You can configure VLANs. You can configure NATing. So end of the day, all these things you can do. But when it comes to the cloud service provider, how do you do this? Almost all the cloud service providers nowadays offers you a solution for this. In AWS, we call it as a VPC, Virtual Private Cloud. So team, tell me, who is responsible for the VPC in the cloud platform? It's a complete virtual data center you deploy in the AWS platform. So who is responsible for that? In the case of our infra security, when you basically deploy a VPC, who is responsible for that? I'm just going to the cloud platform team. So basically, I go to VPC here. Okay. That means you can create your own complete network, your own complete virtual data center. You can configure routers, firewalls, and all. See, it is your responsibility. So basically what happens is, team, the infra security also in most of the cases, the virtual data center you're creating, the physical infra is their responsibility, I agree, but the virtual data center or the virtual network you're creating is your responsibility. There is a term called as micro-segmentation. Micro-segmentation. This is something which I basically, like very much. So basically, when you say the word micro-segmentation, what happens is, team, you are dividing the complete network. You are dividing a complete network into multiple sub-networks. Okay. You are dividing a complete network into multiple sub-networks, or we call it as zones. And you are basically placing various controls like firewalls, ACLs, WAF. Like this, you are basically placing multiple levels of controls to access each of them. You are securing each zones is what we call as a micro-segmentation. You are dividing your whole network into multiple small networks and securing it separately is what we call as a micro-segmentation. So end of the day, this is also your challenge. Most of the cases, even if they provide that, the virtual infra is basically your responsibility. And the third thing is that logging and monitoring. So why it is a concern, team? So If you don't do a monitoring properly, basically when I talk about monitoring and all, people least care about this question. Monitoring is very easy to do and basically it's very simple. But this is something which is the most important, I feel always. The reason is because, team, when you go for a monitoring or logging and all, this is the one which will help you to see what is happening. Unless otherwise you know what is happening, how can you respond to it? See, now we are going to talk about a lot of tools and all, but still my question is that until unless you know what is happening there, until unless you see, for example, if the tool don't notify you, or if you don't basically get alerted about the issues which is happening, how do you respond to it? So if you want to basically respond for something, there must be a proper logging and monitoring there. Then we have something called as a incident response. So what is an incident, team? When you say the word incident, it is what we call as a unplanned event. Okay, we can say according to the traditional ITL definitions that incident is an unplanned event. So I want to add one more word with this. So incident response or incident management and problem management. So team, there are two words called as incident management or incident response and problem management. I'll give you a very interesting point about this. Basically, people get mixed up with these things, but understand that incident response or incident management and problem management is different. How it is different, team? Let me give you a heads up for this. The difference is that the primary goal of an incident response is to restore the operation as soon as possible. I'll show you the tool for this, team. Okay, restore the operation as soon as possible. This is the primary goal of a incident management. Don't forget, restore the operation as soon as possible. Now you are calling me, Krish, there is an issue with my server. So my goal is not to talk about the issue. I have to make sure that you can resume your work as soon as possible. That is the whole goal of a incident response. And what is the primary goal of a problem management? Identifying the root cause of it. The primary goal of a problem management is to identify the root cause of it. Let me give you a simple example for this, team. So I'm talking about an incident management. So basically what happens there, team? I am trying to fix the issue. I'm trying to fix the issue and make sure you can restore the operation. Like, let me give you an example. So now this year you are having a ransomware attack. Okay. Let's say 2019, you're having a ransomware attack. Okay. So what I will do is, okay, you ask me, Krish, what to do. So I will come there and I will restore the old backup and fix it. So it's fixed. So in 2020 again, the same thing is happening. So again, I come and fix it. 21 also the same thing happening. Can we afford this, team? Is it a good idea to afford this thing? No, right? It can cause multiple downtimes. It can cause a lot of trouble to our business. That is what we do with the team. There is a problem management team there, which will identify the root cause of this. Maybe because there was a malicious rule. Maybe because there was a insecure firewall. Maybe because there was an insecure patch. So insecure, like there was a vulnerability there. So I want to identify the root cause of it and fix it. That is what we actually call as a problem management. So all these things are, which is very important to us. This is always a shared responsibility. And finally, team, business continuity and disaster recovery. Business continuity and disaster recovery. So my question is that, team, who is responsible for this? Tell me, who is at most responsible for this thing? BCDR. It's the customers. Why? Because see, basically a cloud service provider like AWS or Azure and all, the cloud service provider provides you a lot of things like this. See, they provides you the regions in, see, all you can see a lot of regions here. If you basically go to the global infrastructure, you can basically see that there is a lot of locations here. So this is the main question that people ask me, that so Krish, they are responsible for providing me all these things. They are responsible for data replication. Then how it is our responsibility? That is why I always want to tell you that redundancy is their responsibility. Okay. Basically providing a redundancy as the guarantee in the SLA is their responsibility. But at the same time, using the proper services, ensuring the proper business continuity, and ensuring the continuous monitoring and replication, and all these things are a part of business. This is your business. I am talking about your business. I am not talking about the technical, the AWS infrastructure. So that is why this is the responsibility of the customer. Okay, customer. Providing a redundant and proper infrastructure. See, yesterday there was a very interesting news actually. Like AWS had an outage for a service. Like AWS EC2 service was not working yesterday. How do you know it's not working or not, team? There is a, see, you can click on this button and you will be able to see the event log there. Okay. And once you see that, you will be able to see that if there is a downtime or not. It's really interesting actually. See, EC2 operational issue. There was a serious issue for the EC2. That means that this particular issue was there for Mumbai and North Virginia yesterday. See this. It was basically for North Virginia yesterday. See this, team. It was like they affected for a long time. Like it affected some serious long time. See this. See the start and end time. See, there was a serious downtime for this thing. So this is their responsibility. But how do you manage if the region goes down? How do you manage your business continuity in this kind of scenarios? So that is why I'm talking about BCDR is always a responsibility of the customer. Okay. And we have more things. I'm just giving some examples. Okay. So the next thing is, team. Okay. We'll basically talk about something called as a defensive and offensive way of security. Defensive and offensive way of security. It's basically, very interesting actually. Like when people come to me for AWS security or AWS pen testing and all, the first thing they will ask me is, Krish, where to start or what to start? What is this difference? Like, what do you basically say about this or what do you basically say about this? When I say the word defensive, I'm talking about the solutions which is provided by the cloud service provider to prevent or to recover from certain kind of attacks and scenarios. It's a defensive way. Like for example, it's a reactive approach. Like I want to make sure I can prevent some attacks, I can detect some attacks, I can respond to some attacks. So I want a mechanism to respond to it. It's a defensive way. So now what we are doing is you're basically, okay, you're taking a vaccine. Okay, it's a defensive mechanism against the virus. Like the same way what happens is I am deploying a firewall. I am deploying a monitoring solution. I am deploying some automation tools to respond to the security attack which is happening. That is what we call as a defensive way. And when you say the word offensive way, you are trying to do some attacks. Let me show you an example. See, when you say defensive, as we discussed, it's a reactive approach to security that focus on prevention, detection, and response to the attacks. But at the same time, if you talk about, it's also called as blue teams actually in the companies, right? Then when you talk about offensive approach, what happens, team? It's a proactive approach. That means using a proper ethical hacking ways of doing things. Okay, it's not cracking, it's a hacking. So using the proper way of doing a hacking process, I am trying to figure out the vulnerabilities and I will see how much I can exploit them. I will try to find out all the maximum possible vulnerabilities from an outsider point of view and I will try to exploit it. Let's say, for example, now your company is coming to me and telling me that, Krish, I want to do a pen testing in my company. So what I'll do is I will basically collect some information from the internet. I will just do some reconnaissance, like I will just gather a lot of information from your side. And that information I'll use to find some IP addresses. And using that, I will try to compromise it using some vulnerabilities. So there's a lot of things about this anyway. So I will tell you both of these approaches. Both are two different sides of it. And as a security professional, I strongly recommend you understand both of it. And okay, so there is one more question that most people ask me in the team that, so Krish, do you have any course on this? Yes, definitely there's a lot of course on this offensive approach also. But still, it is something which always keep on adding up. Why? Because there is a basic principle there. If you are connected, you are always in risk. That point you never forget, team. Whatever security mechanisms you are having, if you are connected, you're always in risk. 100% sure about that. So basically, we can figure out the vulnerabilities and we can try to fix it as soon as possible. That's the only way we can do it. Okay. I will show you some tools in AWS which will help you to do this defensive approach. So team, now when I basically talk about this, one more question that most basically come in picture is that, so Krish, these tools are there, you are saying. So is these tools are the only solution? Not at all. We have a lot of tools. Starting from your AWS S3 encryption, starting from your identity access management, starting from your app access management, your DLP solution, your vulnerability assessment solution, your problem management solution. Like there are a lot of solutions in AWS or basically the cloud providers which can help you to provide a defense against the security issues. First and the foremost one, which I always like to discuss, is basically about the IAM, Identity and Access Management. I will tell you why it is important, team. So basically, how do you fix a vulnerability, team? Basically, how do you fix a vulnerability? Like for example, let's say now you find a vulnerability in a particular device. How do you fix it? You do something called as a patch. So the thing is that there is no patch for human stupidity. That's a very important point which we have to understand. So if we make some mistakes in this particular thing, it can basically bring a complete mess up in the cloud platform. I'll give an example. So how do you access the AWS platform? There are multiple ways you can access your AWS platform. First is you can use the AWS Management Console, of course. Then you can use something called as the AWS CLI or Cloud Shell, we can say. Okay. One is the AWS Management Console. Then we can use the AWS CLI or Cloud Shell. Then we can basically use the SDKs and all. Okay, for developers and all. So basically what happens is, these things are what I always call as a single point of failure. Because, see, just to give an example, now I logged into my cloud platform. You can see my servers running here. You can see my data here. You can see my databases. You can see all the things in my company which is critical for my business. That means that if you people get my username and password, you can get access to all these things, right? If any of you get access to any of these things, you can get the username and you can basically access all these things, right? That is why managing the identity is the most critical thing in this cloud platform. So let me show you an example here. So whenever you're talking about IAM, I like this IAM in Azure a lot more actually, even if it's complicated, but I like it very much. So in AWS also, team, basically what the primary point is that you have to always make a checklist. Okay, checklist of proper best practices which you have to follow for the cloud platform. That is the first thing which we have to always do. Always make sure we basically follow a proper checklist for the things which we want to do in this IAM. And the second thing is that, team, always make sure you follow the principle of least privilege. You always follow the principle of least privilege. What is the least privilege principle, team? Tell me. When you say the word least privilege, it means that give the minimum. Okay, let me give an example for a minimum. So I can show you one of the policies I am using for my students actually. Let me just give me a second. I'll show you an example here. I don't basically want you to understand that completely, but I'm trying to give you an idea on how these things work. Give me a second, team. So this is an example for a policy. Okay. See this, team. This policy, if this policy, what it will happen is, team. Okay, you can see there's a policy here. Okay. What basically will happen here is this particular policy you see here. Okay, this particular policy you see here will only allow access to a particular instance in AWS to start and stop and restart. This will allow the user to start, stop and restart this specific instance only. Like the same way, you have to create the security policies or you have to create the permissions and all purely based on the principle of least privilege. That means that give the 100% minimum. Okay. And always verify the access and see if there is anything wrong you feel here. This is the most important vulnerable point, team. In the pen testing scenarios, I always teach and I always learn. This is the primary point of vulnerability, what I felt, IAM. So AWS team, tell me, so how do I assign permission to a user? So what is the thing I use to give permission to a user? So what happens is that, now let's say we have a user called Sam. Okay. So you can give him a policy. It's very simple. You can give him a policy. And the mistake which we are making is that, yeah, I say that, okay, in Sam, I have only this access or basically I have that access. Do you know that there is something called as a policy prior versions? That means the prior versions in the sense means that now let's say, for example, I am giving the permission in a policy to Sam. Okay. I am giving a policy to Sam that he is having full access. Okay. full access to certain things, to some, let's say, EC2. If I modify this policy to give only read-only access, okay, so now I'm giving a permission to the user called as EC2 full access. But later on, if I modify it to something called as a read-only access, you have to understand that the IAM policy is having a previous version options. That means the user can basically revert to the previous version of the policy. The attacker can basically compromise his credentials and he can revert back to the previous version of the policy. Is it clear, team? There is an option where we can revert to a previous version of the policy. Just think about this, team. So as of now, the user is not having any permission. But what do? We will log in as the normal user, okay, and we do a privilege escalation by simply going for the previous version of the policy. I'll give an example. Now I am telling you that you are having permission for these things, and later on I am removing all the things. Once you basically log in, you can, using some mechanisms, you can go back to the previous version and utilize that. So what is the problem there, team? So like this, there are a lot of security challenges which we have in this IAM. And the key things I felt is that, team, unwanted users, the users which you basically have never used or basically not in use actually. Always check this particular window, team, last activity. This is something which you have to always check. Okay. And one more thing, team, always make sure there is a proper MFA. Point number 1, always follow the proper MFA. Always check for last activity. The third thing is that follow the principle of least privilege. Fourth one is that disable unauthorized or unwanted users. Like for example, okay, now Sam left the company. So what happens is that I want to immediately disable Sam. Like the same way, and always make sure there's a proper strong password policy is there. Like this, you have to basically go through a lot of things like this to make sure this IAM is secure. So I can tell you some 100 things to make this IAM secure. Actually, like this, we have a lot of things. Okay, so that is the first point of challenge we have. Then we have a tool called as a guard duty. Guard duty. One of the best tools I found in AWS is called as guard duty. One of the best tools. So team, what is the purpose of a SIEM solution? Have you heard of the word called a SIEM solution, team? SIEM solution. What is the purpose of a SIEM solution, team? So basically what happens is you're having application logs, you're having your network logs, you're having your database logs. So you are getting all these logs aggregated together to a solution called as a SIEM solution. Give me some examples, team. SIEM stands for Security Information and Event Management, right? So give me some example for SIEM tools. QRadar, Splunk,
Splunk.
Logarithm, yeah, right. Lot of things, yeah, lot of things are there, right? Okay, so basically what happens, team, when you basically go for a SIEM solution, okay, when you go for a SIEM solution, what happens, team? SIEM solutions will analyze your tools, analyze your log files, and based on that, they will give you a heads up on various threats and challenges. One of the best AWS SIEM tool, the native AWS tool, even if it's not 100% suitable for all the requirements, one of the best tools in AWS for SIEM solution is called as guard duty. So I'm going to click on get started. Okay, I'm going to enable this. I will show you some findings here. I'll generate some demo findings and I'll show it to you. Give me a second. So by analyzing my various log files, by analyzing my VPC flow logs, CloudTrail logs, by analyzing a lot of things like this, okay, by analyzing various things, let me show you an example. See, I'll show you a picture here. See, by analyzing your CloudTrail logs, VPC flow logs and DNS logs, they will constantly analyze this, and those log files which they felt suspicious, they will show you the results like this. See, so I'll give an example. So I'm going to something called as a unusual protocol example. So they're telling me that this particular instance or this particular server at this particular time has done something called as a, okay, there is an unknown port number detected. That means this particular port number was used in that server. So like this is not a preventive control, but still, this is something which is basically, this is a tool which can help you to identify the various security threats in your log files and all. Okay. So this is a tool is called as guard duty team, and the guard duty will basically help you to identify the various threats. And one of the best part I like is team, they are not using the custom rules. Many people ask us query that, Krish, is it possible for us to give our own rules? No. They will use machine learning algorithms and anomalies. Okay, they will use anomaly detection and machine learning algorithms and all to figure out the various kind of vulnerabilities. Okay, that is what we call as a AWS guard duty. Now there is one more thing I just want to tell you team. So most people ask me, Krish, there is a lot of tools like this. Do we have to basically learn how to configure all these things? Most of the SecAS tools means the tools which help you to provide security. Most of the SecAS tools are pre-configured. It's little bit configuration you need. Like guard duty, it's almost everything configured. Okay. So the next is team, we have something called as the AWS Detective. To make it simple, I have only implemented this AWS Detective some 2 or 3 times for my customers. It's a comparatively new tool, but I like it very much. The reason is that team, I hope you remember the word I told you. We have 2 words called as a incident management and problem management. Okay. We have 2 words which we call it as a incident management and problem management. Okay. Incident management and problem management. So incident management is about just fixing the issue, and problem management is about root cause analysis, identifying the root cause. Let me give you an example. See, what is guard duty giving you? Guard duty is giving you the incidents happened. You got my point, team. Guard duty is giving you the incident happened. But at the same time, there is a new tool in AWS called as Detective. This tool is telling you the root cause of it. To be honest, it's a really interesting one. You can basically try it out later. So this tool called as guard duty will tell you what is happening there. What is the incident? And this will tell you because of what. Because of, let's say, for example, okay, this port number was used. Let me show you that, team. It's a really interesting one. See, this port number was used by some malicious person. Tell me, team, why does port number was used by some malicious person? Tell me. That is a root cause. So this guy will tell you the root cause of it. See, he will tell you the root cause of it. That is the main reason I basically like this tool very much. It will basically show you what is the root cause. Let me show you this, team. So it will take some time to enable. You have to enable guard duty and wait for at least 48 hours to enable it. But still, this tool will show you the root cause of it. I'm not doing it now. It will take some 48 hours to enable after guard duty. No, it is not a so in-depth tool. The reason is because it will only use the data from the, guard duty findings, the CloudTrail logs of API access and VPC flow logs. So basically, this is for your API access, like whatever things you're doing in the console and CLI. This is for your network access. This is the guard duty findings, SIEM findings. So they will use all these things to tell you what is the root cause of the issue. That is how we call it as a detective. It's a really good tool. You can try it out. And they basically offer a free option for this. Next, one more thing, team. We have something called as a Macie. Macie, even if, I'm just talking in my aspect, okay? Don't feel the tool is bad. I'm talking in my aspect, in my experience. So Macie is a solution. It's good, but still not the best. The reason is why, because team, we have a solution called as a DLP solution, right? So team, what is the purpose of a DLP solution? Data loss prevention or data leakage prevention. What is the purpose of a DLP solution? You want to ensure that if somebody is copying your data, if somebody is sharing your data, if somebody is emailing it, like you want to basically see the violation. But AWS Macie is we can say it's up to an extent, it's a DLP solution. It's a DLP solution, of course. But still, this Macie is only designed to protect your S3 buckets. It is not designed to work with any other storage like EVS and all. This will only work with S3 buckets. Point number 1. Point number 2 is that it basically don't provide you email security and all. It's just about bucket security. Like if somebody tried to access your data from your bucket, or if somebody tried to copy some particular sensitive content to your bucket, or if somebody is trying to access your bucket. So those kind of DLP things can be done by Macie. I think it's getting matured till now also. So it's a very simple tool which can help you to use like a DLP solution. Okay, that's it. And basically one big challenge was there for a long time, that even if AWS is offering a lot of solutions like this, how can they basically see all these things together? Like, it's not possible for me to go to Guard console and all these things every time, right? So I want to basically see all these things together. That is why we have something called as a AWS Security Hub. So Security Hub don't offer you anything except a consolidated interface. AWS Security Hub offer you with a consolidated interface. Okay. So basically, let me show you an example here, team. You have to enable all these things before that. I'm just showing you that. See, it will basically show you the security and compliance in AWS. It's a centralized location where you can see multiple tool findings together. Like you can see guard duty findings. You can see this particular, let's say, detective findings. See, you can see the findings of these tools in a centralized point. That is what we call as a security hub. Okay, that's it. Like if you want to check for some compliance, if you want to check for some security and all, you can basically go for a security hub. But still, I feel like this year there is a lot of this. Upcoming year there is a lot of changes which is upcoming to this. I feel like there is what I felt from AWS actually. Okay, and we have three tools called as CloudWatch, CloudTrail, and Config. So when I basically say the word called as CloudWatch, CloudTrail, and Config, this is the monitoring tool. This is what we call as a monitoring tool in AWS. This is the logging tool. Logging in the sense means API logging. Like for example, whatever things you are doing in the cloud platform, we are making the API calls, right? That API calls are logged in the CloudTrail. Let me show you an example here, team. I am now going to my CloudTrail console. Okay, in the CloudTrail console, I am just going to the last events, or means the logs. You can see that in this CloudTrail logs, okay, let me show you a very interesting thing called as, okay, console login. See, it's a very simple thing. See, in this, you can see that the log is telling me that this particular user from this particular AWS account at this date and time has logged into the AWS Management Console to North Virginia from this IP address using this browser, and he logged in successfully. See, like this, the CloudTrail can give me all the information about the activities you're doing in your cloud platform. See, you can see the activities I have done in the past few hours. See this thing. See, I have opened the detector. I have done this, okay, guard duty. So you can see that the activities I have done just now. See this, 21.3. So basically what happens, team, this will give you the findings or what we have done, what I have done. You can see all the activities we have done in the cloud console and the CLI here. And then we have a config. I will give you a simple example to differentiate this. Even in the interviews also, many people mess up with this. What is the main difference between CloudTrail and config? So team, what is the purpose of a security group? Can anyone tell me, team? What is the purpose of a security group in AWS? It's a firewall, right? It's a virtual firewall configuration. That means I can basically filter the incoming traffic and outgoing traffic of my instances with the help of a security group. Okay, so let's say I am modifying a security group. Okay, I'm a user in AWS. I'm modifying a security group or a firewall. The CloudTrail will tell me that this user at this date and time from this IP address from using this browser has modified this security group. They will tell me this information. This user at this date and time from this IP address using this browser has modified this particular security group. But this tool will not tell me what I have modified. Like they will tell me this security group is what he has modified. But what did I do inside that? Which rule I added? Which rule I removed? They will not tell me what I have done inside that. That is done by config. The AWS config will tell me what changed there. Okay, this person has modified the SSH, or they have allowed RDP, or they have opened a port. Like this, he will tell you in a more detail. For compliance, this is the best tool for compliance you can use, team. Like for example, you can see that you can verify your compliance with certain standards and all. And you can basically get to know if somebody is trying to modify it and all. Okay. So this trio is a very interesting thing. You can learn a lot about this. I'm just giving a heads up. But this trio is a very, very important thing for monitoring. CloudWatch, CloudTrail, config. These three tools can basically help you a lot. Then we have a WAF and Shield. So basically, what is a WAF and Shield, team? WAF stands for Web Application Firewall. So let me give an example. So team, in which layer the normal firewall works? Normally the firewall works in which layer? Tell me, team, anyone? Yeah, it's basically the network layer and transport layer, layer 3 and layer 4. But at the same time, a web application firewall or an application firewall in generic terms, we can say, is working in layer 7 or the application layer. It's a really interesting one. So basically, if you go for a normal layer 3 firewall, what happens is it will filter based on source IP, port number, protocol and all. But the WAF can protect against a lot of things like application level attacks. So let me show you an example here, team. So I'm going to the WAF. So basically in WAF, what happens is that, see, WAF will help you to create your own rules. You can create your own web application rules. Like for example, let's say I can create my own web application rules here. Like for example, let's say, see, add rules. I'm going to create a rule by myself. So what happens, team? Okay, this particular person at this particular time, if he is logging from a particular country, or if so, I can basically address almost all the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities, and I can customize or I can build a lot of rules by myself to protect against this. Okay, WAF is a very interesting solution, and it is basically competent to all the other providers also. Why? Because even if it's a native solution, this tool can provide you with a lot of functionalities as a layer 7 firewall. And as a part of the WAF itself, we have something called as a shield. Even if, team, you are not aware of it, basically when we talk about the DDoS attack, one of the main challenges that every company is facing is a DDoS attack. What is the primary intention of a DDoS attack, team? Availability. The goal of this attack is to affect the availability. So what I will do is, I will flood it. I will flood a lot of traffic. So I will take down the server or whatever device it is to affect the availability. So this is a tool in AWS to prevent this. And basically by default in every AWS account, the Shield standard, the basic tool is enabled by default. But if you want to get an advanced tool with a very comprehensive protection, you can go for a Shield Advanced. But the problem is that not at all cost effective. See this, team. Its starting cost is $3,000 a month. See, this is the starting cost. If you want to enable advanced DDoS protection, it will basically go for a $3,000 per month. It's a really huge amount, right? Okay, now team, do one more thing. We have something called as a Secrets Manager. Okay, we have something called as a Secrets Manager. AWS Secrets Manager. So, Secrets Manager is basically a tool in AWS. Okay, Secrets Manager is a tool in AWS. Okay, which basically helps you to identify or basically keep your secrets, like your passwords and all, very securely. Like, okay, this tool called a Secrets Manager helps you to keep your secrets. Like for example, let's say instead of keeping my secrets in my application and all, I can store my passwords of databases and those kind of secret things in this Secrets Manager. So every time if an application wants to access the database, the application can go to the Secrets Manager, and through the Secrets Manager, they can request for the access to the database. So it's basically making the database and all more secure. Okay, that's it. Now, we have something called as a AWS KMS. So basically, team, what happens is that when we talk about the word called as KMS, it's a very important thing. But there are two things. One is we have a XSM and we have a KMS. We have a cloud XSM and we have a KMS. So team, when you say the word encryption, okay, when you say the word encryption, the primary thing is that the key file is the most important concern we have. Whenever we talk about encryption, the key file is the most important concern we have. So basically what happens is, team, when you go for an encryption scenario, you have to store this key file securely. If the key file is compromised, your data is compromised. So basically what happens is, team, the hardware device, the hardware security device, which basically we use to store the key file, is what we call as an XSM device. Basically you can buy it, it's really costly actually, but still you can buy it. Okay, we have a device called as a XSM device. Okay, HSM device. So this XSM device is something which can be used on your on-premises, and this on-premises device can be used to store your key files, not your data, only to store your key files. And why you have to pay for this? this is tamper proof. When you buy HSM device, there's a lot of vendors in the market like SafeNet, Leona, or SafeNet, Encipher. A lot of companies are basically having this thing. So if you buy this device, it can be costly. The same thing the cloud provider is providing is called as cloud HSM. That means if you want to pursue or if you want to use a dedicated, that's a very important word. If you want to use a dedicated, that is single tenant, dedicated HSM device in the cloud platform, you can go for a cloud HSM. You can store your key files in a dedicated hardware in AWS called as cloud HSM. It is definitely costly actually, but still it is possible. If you are willing to store your encryption keys in a shared HSM device, okay, if you are willing to store your key files in a shared HSM device or multi-tenant HSM device, you can go for KMS. This is something which we can discuss for a whole day, because this encryption is something which, can help you a lot. Like in the cloud platform, for many people, the primary strategy is encryption. So encryption must be properly well defined there. Okay, that's it. Then we have a very small tool, but nothing to configure tool called as a trusted advisor. See, basically, many people call me for getting some suggestions. Like, there's a lot of people who basically ping me via LinkedIn and all, and I'm curious what to do for this. So what I will do is, I will give them suggestions for that. Suggestions. The same thing which is there in AWS to give you suggestions is called as trusted advisor. This is there in Azure also. We call it as trusted advisor. This is not a tool to give you something. They will give you only suggestions. They will give you suggestions on cost, performance, security, fault tolerance. So they can give you a lot of suggestions on this. See, they're telling me that, okay, in my account, I have not enabled MFA. In my account, there is a lot of security groups where we have a lot of risk. Like this, they will give you suggestions on cost, performance, underutilization, overutilization, security, a lot of things like that. Okay, that is what we call as a trusted advisor. And we have one more thing called as a AWS artifacts. When we say artifact in AWS team, what happens is that artifact is it's not a tool. Like for example, how do you verify your cloud provider? The best way you can verify your cloud provider is what we call as a auditing. But definitely, how can you audit your cloud platform? Can you basically walk into your cloud service provider's premise and do the auditing? No, right? So what we basically do is, team, in the cloud platform, if you want to see the third-party audit reports and compliance reports and all, you can go for something called as artifacts. The tool called as artifacts can help you, okay, in seeing a lot of compliance reports. Nothing to do, it's not a configuration tool. It will basically show you the reports, like for HIPAA, for PCDSS, for RBI, like this. They will give you the compliance star certification documentation, like this ISO standard. So if you want to know that, okay, if AWS is complying with the ISO 27000, click on this and you can download the report. You will be able to see that if they are complying with or not. Like this, they will show you all these reports and what is the validity for each report and all. Okay, that's it. Just a few more things, team. Even I can talk to you a lot of tools. Like if we can continue this for hours, if it's really interesting actually to talk about this. But just I'm stopping here, team. We have a lot more tools in AWS, but I'm just stopping here as of now. And I will give you one more thing, the offensive approach. So offensive or pen testing, it's a different side, but this is really interesting. If you're well aware and if you're good in security in AWS, plus if you know the Linux and all, if you know a little bit Linux and all, then this thing will be your time passing. Like rather than watching movies and all kind of things and all, right, you will end up in doing this process every day. That much interesting this process is actually. Like for example, I am now having a secure AWS infrastructure. How do I know it's secure? Even after doing all these things, even after providing all the security things, enforcing controls and all, how do you know it's secure? By doing an offensive approach, by doing a pen testing. So previously, if you want to do pen testing in AWS, you have to get approval from AWS first of all. Like some years back when I started and all, if you want to do pen testing in AWS, you have to basically get a approval from AWS for that. But now what happens is, if you want to do pen testing in AWS allows the customers to do pen testing, okay, without any kind of prior approval for these 8 things. AWS basically allows you to do pen testing for these things by default without any prior approval needed. So if you want to know more about this thing, you can see this report here. See this. See, you can basically do pen testing for these services except these activities. So Krish, what if I want to do these activities? If you want to do these activities, or if you want to pen test some other services, first of all, you have to get approval from AWS. That's all. If you basically want to do pen testing on any other services other than this, or if you want to do any of these prohibited activities, you have to first of all get an approval from AWS for this process. Okay. But definitely, it is possible for us to pen test a lot of things in AWS, okay, without approval from them. Okay, there is a lot of tools in the market, and I can give you a very interesting link. I felt, okay, this is something which I'm giving you personally. I felt this is a very simple link. You can basically see this team. Okay, arsenal of AWS Security Tools. See, it's a really good collection of tools. You can see there's a lot of tools. Like for example, you can see a tool called Scout Suite, Crawler, CloudSploit, Mapper. See, there's a lot of tools in this pen testing. You can find a lot of websites which can provide you AWS pen testing tools. Okay, let me show you one simple example, team. So now I am currently in my Linux console. Okay, I'm now in my Linux console. So what I'm going to do is, team, I'm going to do a pen testing here. Okay, so let's say for example, Scout. I'm typing Scout plays AWS. It's a tool which is really interesting. Okay, so the tool called Scout. Let's see what it will do. So I'm opening my tool called Scout Suite here. Let's see what this tool will do. See this, team. This is the open source multi-cloud security tool. That means it can audit your AWS, Azure, GCP, Alibaba, and Oracle. And what happens, team? This tool allows you to do auditing of your cloud platform for your security posture and all. Like they will expose the APIs and all, which is basically exposed and a lot of things and all. So what we can do there? It's very simple actually. See this. I can press enter here. See, they will basically do the security testing for our AWS infrastructure. See, you have to configure it. Actually, I have pre-configured it. End of the day, once you've done this, team, you will get a report like this. See this, team, you will basically get a report like this. This is my report. See this is my report for my AWS account. Okay, in my case, in CloudTrail, I have not configured certain things. See, you can basically see the various reports about my account. See this, team, in my EC2 service, there is a lot of critical things I have to address. Like this, there is a lot of tools in AWS, and even, team, like we have tools like the Scout Suite. Then I'll show you one more tool which I found very interesting for my requirement. Because many people tell me this, like they are interested in there's a tool called as Crawler. Crawler means that, team, this tool is very interesting. Like just in case if you want to do some CIS benchmarks and all. See, what is CIS benchmarks? They give you best practices, right? They give you best practices. If you want to check the CIS benchmarks for the AWS security, okay, instead of doing it manually, you can go for this tool called as Crawler. Let me show you that, team. See, I'm going to my Crawler. So basically, what happens, team? This tool will completely check my AWS account to regard with the CIS benchmarks. Like this, we have a lot of tools in the market for doing pen testing and security testing in AWS. Okay, I'm just giving you some examples here, team, and you can find a lot more. You can basically go for many other websites. Like we have a Rhino Labs. A lot of companies are providing various pen testing tools and all. Okay, that's it. So you can basically check for, but still, end of the day, pen testing is something which is very interesting to learn. And pen testing is something where we are able to identify the vulnerabilities in AWS account and see how can you track it. I'll give you one more example for this, team, in my personal aspect. Let's say there is a question that people ask that, so Krish, how do we start this process in the real time? So understand that pen testing in the cloud platform and pen testing in the on-premise is the same. I will say that pen testing in cloud and pen testing in on-premises is almost same. Let me give you a question, team. So you are a pen tester. You are a penetration tester. I'm asking you to pen test my server. Anyway, you are doing it from remotely, right? So now I'm asking you, team, can you please pen test my server? You will say yes, Krish, and you will basically pen test my server remotely. The same question I'm asking you to pen test in the cloud, that's also remote. So basically what happens is the process is always same. You will always start with a very weak account, or you will basically start with some IP addresses, and you will go step by step to find out the vulnerabilities and to exploit it using, like, we can use Nmap, we can use Metasploit, we can use CloudGoat. We have a lot of tools in the market for doing this process actually. Okay. Thank you, team. Thank you so much.